Hey, g'day, I'm Steve Lehman. I was a Master Warrant Officer with the Royal Canadian Dragoons. We were attached to the 1st Battalion Royal Canadian Regiment in Petawawa, and we deployed on Roto 6 to Afghanistan, to Roto 6 05 to 06. There's a couple, naturally. We got there, of course we had basically left when the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry under Colonel Hope were overseas, and as we're departing to leave, we're reading the newspapers, and our families are reading the newspapers about how many guys have been killed recently, and we're saying, well, that won't happen to us, we'll be okay. We deployed in, would have been August of 05 or so. By the time we had the handover, we were pretty well in theater for about a month before we launched Operation Medusa, which was the push across the Arghandab River to chase the Taliban out of their defense positions. Panjwai was the city. They were defending, basically it's the gateway to Kandahar. You control the city of Panjwai, you control the gateway to Kandahar, and you control the city itself. So the Taliban had dug in there after the Patricias had left, and they intended to stay. Initially, during the start of Medusa, our squadron was to be the 4th maneuver element as the other companies from the battalion were pushing across the river. A British reconnaissance aircraft crashed with about 11 members on board, all of them killed. So our squadron went to, for the most part, our squadron went to deploy and protect the crash site. By the time the first phase of Arghandab had ended, we had not been deployed in the initial battle. We did have some family that had taken casualties, so we moved to Patrol Base Wilson to let the Padre brief their members. We were in Wilson for a couple of weeks, and eventually we started to establish observation posts across the Arghandab River and built a route, I believe it was Summit, so we could allow the farmers to come back and start tending their crops. It was during this time in would be early October that we had established a few observation posts, and one of our observation posts was hit with a small arms mortar machine gun fire as we were pulling in to resupply it. We had called in the contact initially. Basically think it was the engineers were blowing things up in place. When we saw the second round come in long above the observation post, we knew that they were in contact, so we called the contact report. We were traveling with a LAV 3, which was my vehicle. We had a Bison, which is a basically armored 8-wheeled vehicle, and we had one cargo truck with all our combat supplies, fuel, ammunition, water, and rations. So we loaded the crew up from the truck because it's not very well armored. It has ballistic blankets and some additional protection. We loaded them in the back of my LAV. And as the observation posts were still under fire, we brought my LAV and the Bison and positioned ourselves between the observation post, which was getting hit, and the enemy. I designated my target to put down suppressive fire with his 25mm cannon, but unfortunately he couldn't observe the targets through the high corn crops. So he just scanned his arcs, and I started engaging the enemy with the turret-mounted machine gun. While we dismounted Sergeant Hermiston and Corporal Knisley to tend the wounded which were there. They had, one was pretty well killed instantly, Sergeant Craig Gillum, and there were 5 others who were wounded in the attack. I looked over just supervision of the site and calling in the contact report on the radio. I looked over in my junior car, which was a weapons technician. He was also engaging the enemy with his hull-mounted machine gun. Rick Harris, Master Corporal Rick Harris, phenomenal young soldier, who's also in the area, but I haven't been in touch with him. So Rick was also putting down suppressive fire, and this is, this is exemplary. This is something that you want to have as your junior car, someone that's actually doing the job when the things are happening. We evacuated the wounded as best we could. There were, I believe, 5 of them loaded up into 2 vehicles, and then including Corporal Mitchell, who was critically wounded. We couldn't call on a dust-off helicopter at the time because there was enough fire coming down in the area that it was a hot landing zone. I'm sure the Americans would have loved to come down, but we didn't want to jeopardize their lives by trying to evacuate us from the scene. And we know that the patrol base Wilson was only a couple kilometers away, so in that time, we didn't want to amplify the damage to our own forces. So we got in our vehicles, loaded up casualties in the back of mine, as well as in the back of Rick's Bison, and we headed off. Unfortunately, Darren had parked the ammunition fuel truck on our out route, so my gunner volunteered to jump in the truck and move it out of position, which was, still, the firefight was just about over, but it was still risky, and it's, no, Pat, you're not going to do this if someone's going to do something stupid. I'm going to put my life at risk, not you. So I jumped in the ammo truck, and I was driving it out of the kill zone, and then I realized that, can't roll down the windows are ballistic proof. If I hit the bomb, where we had just run over an IED 6 days prior, my son's 16th birthday, this would not end well being a truck. So the truck is now in a safe spot. It's time to not lead the withdrawal with this truck, because there's no means of engaging vehicle-borne IEDs from the cab of the truck. It shouldn't be leading. It's a quasi, precious commodity, the fuel and ammunition. So I jumped back in the LAV, and we went to Patrol Base Wilson and evacuated the wounded on the American Dust-Off, which had just landed at the time. Unfortunately, Corporal Mitchell had died on the aircraft when he was going to get evacuated to Kandahar, the first hospital. We went back later that night to evacuate the Sergeant Gable who had been killed and recover the truck. Unfortunately, the truck that night rolled into a large ravine, and we spent the next better part of the day and a half bringing out the ammunition, the water, and the fuel. We had two fuel trucks. We had two trucks, 12-ton cargo trucks with us. One of them was named the Challenger, one was the Columbia, and the Gallows Humor for the space shuttle. As we figured if the trucks were hit, we'd have the first Dragoons in space. So the guys, the Gallows Humor at the time. We didn't have enough trucks that we could actually keep the ammunition and fuel separate, so we basically piled the least dangerous things up towards the cab: the water, the rations, the ammunition, and the fuel. So although it really wouldn't have mattered if it was destroyed, it still would have had pretty well the same effect. But we were hoping, and you hope for the best and prepare for the worst. So we picked Gillum up that night, brought him back, evacuated him to the Patrol Base Wilson. As there was no dust-offs or other helicopters to evacuate the body, we put him in the reefer on a flat of soft drinks. So like you're going into Zara's, except you're laying out a body bag and on the flats of Coca-Cola. We, in that area, we would lose Mark Wilson a couple days later at our second observation post. He was a young soldier. We were just really short of crewmen within our squadron. We were sort of an add-on to the battle group. So we didn't have the replacement personnel we should have had. But there was limits on capacity of how many troops you're allowed to deploy, so we took what we could have. We had one of the drivers had injured himself, so Mark had volunteered to go in with us on the convoy to basically drop off some infantry elements to try and monitor and take out the guys that were planting roadside bombs. So we would drop these guys off at night in the dark and pick them up before first light. We were coming back 27th September was my son's 16th birthday, and we hit a buried IED, which thankfully didn't completely detonate. It was the Army charge was just an anti-personnel mine with a couple tank mines, 3 I believe underneath it, an anti-tank rocket, and a jerry can of homemade napalm. So for the longest time, the RSM before he was killed, Bob Gerard would tease me because we used to carpool together, and it'd be, Steve, what's at RSM? Oh, you don't know how lucky you are, Steve. And I was like, don't talk about that RSM, that's, it's kind of creepy. But eventually, a couple days later, the engineers had briefed him, and it was the, knock wood at the time, it was the biggest IED in theater at the time, but they were just getting bigger as our defenses would get stronger. But that was a rough one because that was on the son's 60th birthday, and you're not thinking, what the casualty, or you're not thinking of your crew or yourself. You're thinking of your family. What would happen if so my son remembered his birthday for the rest of his life, that Dad was maimed and or killed, and burnt to death horrifically. So yeah, birthdays have a different meaning. But I went to church that weekend and said, if you're up there, thank you, I owe you one. But I believe there's no atheists in foxholes, but that's just me because of a couple incidents like that throughout my career. So yeah, we were picking up the snipers, and we'd picking up the infantry call signs. Snipers is okay, and Mark was gunning the second vehicle. The driver, because we were short, was the infantry platoon warrant. He was a warrant Dominic Chenard. I asked him if he wanted to lead in the bomb-proof vehicle or he wanted me to lead in my LAV because I had the better gun and sighting system, but he had the, quote, better protected vehicle. Dom said he wanted me to lead, and I thought, oh, that really sucks because I was hoping you'd lead in the bomb-proof vehicle, but I can't. Hey, I gave you the choice, so I'm stuck with it. So we went out with the LAV, and we took the turn high on the outside of the turn, and he took the turn short, and struck an IED which penetrated the hull of the bomb-resistant vehicle, RG-31. There's nothing, even the Leopard 2 tank isn't bomb-proof, but bomb-resistant, and it pierced the hull through a tank mine, and it perforated Mark's femoral artery, and he bled out before we could really do much to him. So he was another one of our casualties, which would have been the third casualty Dragoons lost, and it would have been on the morning of the 7th September. But yeah, we lost 3 casualties there, doing the job we were over there to do. So we had great support from the Americans, great support from the artillery. For the longest time we were camped, dug in on Spearman Gar, which was a anthill in the middle of Taliban country. There was some reports through monitoring their communications that they were going to have 250 fighters trying to overrun our position one night, so we were on stand to, which is pretty well 50% manning, waiting for them to try and rush the camp, and we would have reenacted the Green Berets film. That things would have been better for us without the food gas. And I had served in a few peacekeeping operations, peace enforcement operations. Somalia, Bosnia with the United Nations, Bosnia again with NATO, and our guys did a phenomenal job over there. We brought peace to our country for 20 some odd years, and as we could say, we were winning the war when we left. But eventually, we were there for 20 years. We trained a professional military force. And it's somewhat disheartening to know that they pretty well, we carried the fight for their country more than they did. So it's now when we pulled out, and when NATO pulled out, it's reverted back to the Taliban. So disappointed. What's more disappointing is knowing that people, were saying that it was for nothing. And I said, no, we gave them, a peace and an opportunity to, this is what you could have for 20 years. Women were educated, children were educated. There was some freedom again, but unfortunately, it wasn't necessarily what their people wanted. For the most part, they wanted the security, and they really didn't care so much as who provided that security. Absolutely. Well, it's still fresh in everyone's mind because it's been, I came back, it's pretty well 15 years ago now. And some incidents I can remember exactly what was happening, whereas other elements was like, yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah, I think I was there for that. But we landed in some Air Force base in the middle of the desert after, 24 some odd hours. Stayed there for a couple hours, don't know where we were. It was just some canvas structure, and then landed in Kandahar. And, eventually marched over and started processing it. It was pretty well something that we'd done for years. We did the same thing in Somalia. Just flew in with strategic airlift and landed in the port of Mogadishu. All ready to go with your combat fighting kit on, rifle at the ready. Open the ramp, and there's a guy there standing in his underwear with his desert boots on, waving you forward. It's like, feel like the new guy in the Vietnam films. Boy, do we look silly. But no, it's just is a beautiful country, despite the fact that 85% deforested over the years. Harsh conditions, but I don't say it was a great experience. Go back in a second under different circumstances, but we did our part. During Operation Medusa, we didn't have a lot of interaction with the locals. The locals had fled the area. We had dropped leaflets there, so almost everyone we interacted with was Taliban. So we did do a lot of liaison. The locals, when we were driving through the cities, they're looking at us somewhat skeptical, but we're polite and waving. But for the most part, we didn't do a lot of interaction with the locals. That's not what we were over there for. They had left the battlefield, so. Like in no man's land, you're not going to be saying hi to dogs and puppies and little girls. They weren't around either. It was in no man's land. So eventually, when we secured the area, the farmers would start coming back, and there'd be children and people, and you'd wave. But we were mounted in vehicles, so we didn't really have a lot of interaction. We dealt more with the Afghan army and the Afghan police, who both seemed highly professional and motivated. But yeah, honestly, we didn't have a lot of interaction with the kids and puppy dogs like we do in all the other tours. It was good to be home because with we were outside the wire for the 7 months we were there. We were pretty well outside the wire for 5 months. So it was nice to get in some place where you could relax somewhat. You never let your guard down completely, but you still don't. Everything's guarded. Every noise is bring something back, and you have that 0 to 60 reaction, that fight or flight. I'm ready to go, and it pretty well spools up quite quickly. So it's one of the I don't want to say electrical malfunctions of your brain, but it's something that you're trained to do. I was very lucky. I've been married to the same wonderful woman for since 1986. I won't do the math to embarrass myself, but it's tougher on the families than it is, like I said, on my son's 16th birthday. We hit the idea. Of course, we didn't discuss it until later when I got home. You're playing down when we had the luxury of being able to make a phone call maybe once a week, or the internet once a week or something. So we were spoiled in that aspect. And you could very quickly communicate with your family. But there's only so many things you can say, because they're going to be worried, and they're either glued to the news or want to avoid the news completely. But it's hard on the families, because when you're over there, you're really just concerned about doing the job and taking care of your troops. And the families will be okay, and they don't want to burden you with what's happening on the home front, because you've got other things to be concerned with. So I would dare say it's much harder on the families than it is for the servicemen overseas. So many of the situations which happened overseas we'd done on, we'd seen in workup training, validation exercises, and you harp on the troops to be vigilant and protect yourselves and dig in whatever you can, and despite your best efforts, you can never take enough precautions. So of course, if we lose someone, you always second guess, could have done something more, could have tried a different approach to train someone to learn something. But you do what you can with the time you have, and then you go overseas, and stuff will happen, and the cards will be played. You can always think that you'll second guess yourself for the rest of your life, that did we do the right thing at this time? And you'll play with that for the rest of your life. You'll think that if we had have done this, maybe this guy wouldn't have happened. But unfortunately, wartime, you can't mitigate all of the dangers. Sometimes you're going to lose good men to just bad luck, and they were a highly professional military. And so we were going to fight terrorists. No, we were fighting a professional military of guys with anyone with an axe to grind against the West, Chechens, Pakistans, Afghans, and these guys that had been to war for some time. So they were professionals. They were dug into trenches and bunkers, and they knew exactly what they were doing. So it wasn't, we were not engaging just a bunch of guys with an AK and a chip on their shoulder. So it was, it was a professional military we were facing, and a regular military, I'd say, but still very professional in their training. So regrets, We lost 3 guys from the squadron itself. We had a couple of guys injured. You train as hard as you can, and what happens happens over there. So no, I wouldn't say I really have any regrets. Other than prior to going over, I'd told Bob Gerard, the RSM, who was killed on the 27th of November. He and I were carpooling for years, so we were close friends. And I promised his wife when Bob flew over that we'd take care of him. And it's one of those things that you're making these promises, and you again hope for the best. And unfortunately, Bob was killed when he came back from his leave. And the first time I saw Jackie after that, what do you say? I'm sorry, there was nothing we could do. We were on the radio, but RSMs are pretty well sacred. RSMs and colonels are sacred, but in a counterinsurgency operation, no one is really protected. If your vehicle looks different, you could be a target for a vehicle-borne IED or a roadside bomb or something. So that is very random. I know we had Rick Mercer came over, the great Canadian comedian. He came over and I was in for a ramp ceremony, so we had just lost someone, and he asked if he could go to the observation posts. And I sort of laughed and said, Rick, if you're going out, don't go by vehicle, go by helicopter, because there's no tourists up there. And your rear end will be puckered like this. Just be very, very, don't stick your head out. You can't wave to the people. They don't care who you are. If anything, you're would be an even bigger target. And I think that was probably the first time someone actually told them what it was really like there, as opposed to, people love me, I'm Rick Mercer. Yeah, the Canadians will, but the Afghans, hey, you're a great figurehead. It's like that one tour I believe they brought the Stanley Cup over. It was before us, and the joke going around, what's the difference between the Taliban and the Toronto Maple Leafs? Is the Taliban had a better chance of capturing the cup. Something along that line. Yeah, we took him later on in the tour around Christmas time. I had to come in for emergency dental work, and the Canadians went to lunch, so I couldn't get my dental service. So I went to the Brits, and the first thing was, I told them, Brit dentist, and it was like I didn't realize the British had dentists. But they were fantastic, and so yeah, I met up with Rick Mercer, and we brought him coffee, and General Hillier came over and tapped me on the shoulder and asked what was up, and I said, hey, you got to take care of you guys, even the guys that weren't funny. We had Rick Mercer over there in Marywall, some phenomenal Canadians, and a few other people whose names I do not recall, but yeah. It was a great experience, other than the fact that, we lost a lot of great people, so. Well, you know what, some things will always be with you. You'll always have that automatic reaction to, things like concussion, fireworks, a whoomp. And your body will naturally react because you're trained to go to ground, and so you'll naturally be jumping, or you could be jumping. Not everyone's going to have that effect, but if I hear a concussion from a dump truck slamming its gate, my body will be ready to hit the ground. It's just it's a natural reaction after so much training. Instantaneous reaction, and it's life-saving, but I don't say it's something you can't turn off because your body's been programmed to react that way. So, good one. You want to look back and you could say it's the first war Canada's lost. That's something we've never done before. But again, we ceased combat operations, I believe, in 2011, and the training mission in 2014. So, we were winning when we left, but it was. We, the West, wanted to bring their country around more than they did, I guess. So, a lot of people think it's for naught, the sons and daughters we'd lost for Canada. But if you speak to any of the veterans or families that have fallen, it can't be for nothing. It was, we gave them 2 decades of peace and nation building, which can never be taken away. No, I think you pretty well covered everything. We had some fantastic support over there, and you guys have been great. The press was great. We used to get this wonderful lady from the Collingwood area used to send us crates of fudge. homemade fudge, and we thought for the longest time she was a store, but she was making these crates of fudge, which was delivered to me from a very close friend of mine, Mark Gerard, who was eventually an RSM of the Dragoons. And every week you'd get a great big box of maple and chocolate fudge, and letters from the kids were. I had I think about 170 people that I was corresponding with, and thankfully one of them was from school. So I answered the individual letters by name and mentioned that person by paragraph, and then address all the combined questions from the school. But yeah, you kept busy. Well, you didn't want to, we'd all been on tours where people are grabbing the letters, and then the guys are in combat, so they don't always have the time. So I wanted to make sure that no one got forgot. How come Billy got a letter back, but Sally didn't get a letter? So I tried to, form the combined letters for the classrooms and that, and you'd answer questions like, yes, you have a dog. No, we don't have any dogs over here. Yes, you have kittens and pets at home, and here's the names, and it's hot, and favorite hockey team, and all the gamut of questions that the kids would ask. The support from back home was phenomenal. We used, other than the fudge, we had a case of shampoo and toothbrushes, and one guy used to send us from the Windsor Casino decks of cards. So everyone could have, you never have to play a game of poker with the same deck twice. It's like, okay, guys, thank you, but enough already with the darn cards. A bottle of Head and Shoulders will last me 6 months. I don't need a case a week, It's, not like Troy, always working. So phenomenal support from the Canadian population and stuff. So it was fantastic, and that was the most endearing thing, because all the operations before then, it was like, you guys are in Somalia, black marks against you. Like, no, we're really professional army guys. Come on, so nice to be a rock star again. You know what? A lot of the stuff we had learned in Afghanistan was stuff we had already learned in Somalia. When we were coming back in '93, just for the 2 weeks leave, and we're flying into Canada, and you start seeing the lights of the Quebec townships, where all the beautiful little towns are laid out in these nice little habitat rows and stuff, and I was like, well, this is really nice, because in Mogadishu or Afghanistan or wherever, Somalia, you didn't see electricity, you didn't see lights and organization and traffic. So that was the big coming home moment, where you get the lump in your throat and the tear in your eye, saying, boy, are we lucky. And for communications, and we didn't have great food in Afghanistan, except we were in camp, because they had American Brown and Roots or something, or Brown and Kellogg, I'm not sure. It was a phenomenal catering company. It provided a lot of good food, although greasy. But in Somalia, we were on IMPs, which is the boil-a-bag meals for 5 months. And we were lucky to get maybe a bun or one fresh meal in the whole time we were there. So, as well as in Afghanistan, you could pretty well, we were looking at 20 years difference in technology. In Somalia, we were lucky if we got one phone call a month, and you had to drive for 3 hours to get to the phone to see if the phone line was up, only to drive 3 hours back for your 5-minute phone call. Whereas, in even the Bosnia days in the 90s, late 90s, we had guys complaining that the internet was slow. Oh, the internet's slow. Oh. So, yeah, the technology changed somewhat, because we were able to communicate with people at home. Like I had mentioned before, I called one World War II vet over the satellite phone, Orville Cook, from the Queen's Own Rifles, and we were launching a fire mission, artillery fire mission from our Spearman Gar, and we were blowing the living heck out of the Taliban positions. And I held the phone up to the artillery piece, and Orville, I bet you never did that in World War II, is we're shelling the heck out of them. So yeah, technology changed a whole bunch, so it was so much easier to communicate at home. But, one of the things, we had still dug trenches. We were still living in pretty well in bunkers or underground, because when the rockets and the bullets are coming in, you want to be below the ground. And that's one thing, people think, oh, well, you didn't have trench warfare for 100 years, why are we still digging trenches? Well, everywhere we go, we're digging trenches and filling sandbags, because when artillery starts to fly, you really want to be low to the ground or in your vehicle mounted up. So, but yeah, we had It was a great tour, other than the fact that, it was so good to be home. Because, the women are worried sick. I was telling Dave before that 3 o'clock in the morning, my teenage daughter had a friend come and knock on the door, and my wife was in tears, terrified to answer the door because she figured it would be the staff car with the priest and the officer. So when she, finally got the courage to open the door and see who it was and found that it was a friend of Stephanie's, knife hand, chop, and ripped this kid a new one, and kid never came back. It's like, what the heck were you thinking? There's no telegrams, and yeah, granted, it would have waited to the daytime, but still, the wives and families don't know that.